Hello and welcome to SHRP Talk, the show by washed up athletes for washed up athletes looking to be their best self. In today's episode, Jaden and I sat down and talked about dealing with injury and pain as a former athlete. Obviously, as a high school and college athlete, you have a ton of resources at your disposal when you're going through these things. But as a former athlete, it can be more of a lonely journey, and figuring out how to navigate this can be difficult as we age and deal with some more aches and pains, especially from our playing days. So we discussed a ton of strategies on diagnosing and dealing with this pain and knowing when it's time to seek out outside help. We also talk about some active things you can do on your own as far as some recovery and resting tools, as well as some things you can do movement-wise to come back from these injuries. We talk about the mental and spiritual impact of these injuries, and we just dive into a discussion about some practical things you can do in order to deal with this from a physical, mental, and spiritual standpoint. So it was an awesome discussion, and if you're dealing with any sort of pain or injury, as we all probably are at this point in our lives, I think you'll get a ton of benefit from this on some practical things you can do, as well as some approaches you can take to deal with this and get out of pain or deal with that injury. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you enjoy. Before we get rolling with today's episode, I want to take a minute to tell you about SHRP Training. Snyder Health, Recovery, and Performance Training is designed for former college athletes to improve their physical, mental, and spiritual health. For only $12 a month, you can choose a training plan that is catered to your needs, interests, and goals, with new programs delivered each month through the TeamBuilder app. You'll also receive 24/7 messaging and feedback from coaches, access to an exclusive Discord to continually learn and be encouraged by others, a 20% discount on Thorne supplements, and access to the Sharp Edge, the ultimate guide to upgrading your diet, sleep, and life. Iron sharpens iron, so let us help you become your sharpest self. Now let's go.
Research is good. I'd not so high on like cold plunge stuff. I don't think the research is behind much of a benefit as far as like actual physiological differences. Like I think there's some mental stuff, maybe like an increase in dopamine, but
it's definitely more brain than like physical, right?
Right. It's not going to get me to buy a cold tub and deal with getting into it. I don't know. I don't think the benefit's there for me personally.
You ever do cold showers?
I used to. Like I did at Northwestern, but even like...
Notice anything?
I mean, yeah, like the mental, like it definitely wakes you up. Like if you do it in the morning, like you're rolling, but it also sucked to do. So it's just like, I don't know. Especially in the shower. I think shower is worse than tub. Like the constant stream of cold water versus just being able to sit in it. Like sitting in it, because I did a lot at South Dakota State. Sitting in it is just like the first 20 seconds. You just have to breathe through it and then you're chilling for minutes. But like shower, it's just hard to like that stuff. Like I'm fine when it's like on my legs, but once it gets to like my chest or my face, it's like that's cool.
Yeah, back to the nerve stuff, I guess, kind of getting into the bulk of what I want to talk about is just like dealing with injury or pain as a former athlete. Like as a high school or college athlete, you have a lot of resources to deal with it, like diagnose and rehab it. But dealing with it as a former athlete, you kind of just have to go off of experience and guessing if you're stubborn like me and don't want to seek help. I feel like for back pain, a lot of people will diagnose it as like sciatic nerve. How do you distinguish the difference between that and just like other back issues?
Yeah, I mean, going into physical therapy, especially outpatient, back pain is going to be like the number one thing that we see, and it's important to truly dig into what they're experiencing as their pain. Like, is it localized to the back? Is it unilateral, bilateral? Is it shooting, burning pain down your leg? Like, there's specific signs to nerve pain that is only nerve pain and not necessarily muscular or joint. So, especially with sciatic, you'll get that burning numbness down the back of the leg and the butt cheek, kind of radiating all the way down. And there's specific, they're called dermatomes. They follow specific patterns. So you'll have pain in that pattern and you can localize it back to a specific nerve root. And so you kind of know, and there's tests we do. There's like a straight leg raise test. There's a slump test where you can kind of stretch that nerve and it'll reproduce symptoms. So I wouldn't say it's easy to distinguish the two, but if it's like a burning, numbness, tingling type pain down the leg, it's pretty easy to diagnose as kind of a sciatic. But then again, like, not all injuries are like that's the sole reason. Like, you could have muscular stuff and nerve stuff at the same time. Like, it's pretty rare to just have one thing going on. So you could have that dull, achy back pain from a muscle, but also the shooting pain down the leg. So it's really finding the source, finding the root, and trying to localize it. I think that's the biggest thing. Is PTs will do a lot of different special tests and look at your anatomy, look at your alignment, use palpation, use manual stuff to try to find the root, and then choose exercises based on that to kind of help it. Because, I mean, with back pain, you're getting maybe hip flexors, you're getting like vertebrae, there's a lot of things going on. Like, it could be referred pain from an organ. Like, back pain could be a lot of different things.
So complex.
Our body's crazy. Like, pain it's typically a signal. Like, it's a warning signal. It's a way our body tells us something's going on and we should probably pay attention to it. So I think being hyper aware of what your body is maybe trying to say, and trying to tune into maybe what's causing your symptoms and what's reproducing your symptoms, I think, is important. But honestly, going to a physical therapist is never going to be a bad thing. So
yeah. Well, I think too, it's so important to know what kind of body structure is injured, because, like, obviously how you rehab a nerve versus a muscle versus a tendon is going to be pretty different. I feel like I can rehab tendons well just from having so many basketball players deal with that. And I mean, I've had good resources for that. Jake Tura has a jumper's knee protocol, so I feel like you can apply that for a lot of tendon stuff. But if you rehab that issues like that, so like jumper's knee, if you try rehabbing that the same as you would a muscle, or if it's a nerve issue, it's probably not going to go well. So I think people are always going to be hesitant to spend money. So if you do try and do it on your own, I think it's important to just figure out what it actually is that's injured. I think like ChatGPT could be good for that. Just being like, okay, I got this thing going on. Can we do a little Q&A back and forth to figure out what this is? I don't know. So that can be a fun way to figure something out. But yeah, if nothing, when would you say is the right time to seek outside help?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's distinguishing more of a chronic behavior, like if it's happening every time you work out, or it's limiting your daily activities, like you can't get in and out of a car, or you can't do things you normally can, and it's been a week, it's been 2 weeks, and it's not getting better. Because time typically heals. Like, that's the great thing about our body, is it's super adaptive, and we have a lot of healing power. So I think if it's been time and you've kind of laid back and rested a little bit and it's still not getting better, I think, yeah, maybe you use resources, you use online stuff. I think we're getting to the point where you can do that, and it's pretty reliable if you do input signs and symptoms to kind of narrow down if you do need to seek more help. But yeah, if you're getting nerve stuff, if you're getting stuff that's more chronic, I it's hard to do on your own, right? It's not a one size fits all recovery for those types of injuries. So I think just nipping it in the butt and getting it done right away is always better, because we know, especially I'm in a pain class right now, it's something that acute injuries can become chronic, and chronic pain can linger even after the injury is healed, right? So our body can become sensitized to that pain, and we have what are called like silent nociceptors. So the nociceptors are what sense pain, and they get turned on when there's inflammation, when there's injury. So these things can stay turned on after we experience pain. So we want to kind of nip that acute pain, that short pain in the butt, so it doesn't linger on and become worse and worse as we go. So it's something we don't want to deal with pain. And right, as an athlete, like, you're told to fight through pain and kind of stick it out for the season, right? But that doesn't have to be the case in real life, right? We're not trying to win gold medals here. We're trying to have our body feel good so we can perform well in whatever we want to do. So yeah, I think it's having the bigger picture, longer mindset in mind. Maybe that means you do have to miss a couple workouts. Like we were talking with your little sickness recently, like sometimes you just got to like take it with your chest and take a day off. And it can be hard for somebody like you and me who love moving and love seeing what our bodies are capable of. So I think as we progress past sports, trying to truly just dive into what your body's telling you, and just trying to maybe change the goals to feel better. Look, I mean, you can have multiple avenues of goals, different categories: feel good, move good, look good, whatever it may be. But I don't think you have to necessarily fight through these nagging injuries like you would in an athletic world. So,
yeah, I think, especially for me as someone who loves working out, I almost see, obviously it's a good thing, but I don't really see it as like an idol or something that I really rely on until I can't do it. So I think it's honestly sometimes a good reminder if I do need to take a day off or if I do have something flare up, just a reminder that it's not everything. Even though it is a good thing, it's important. It shouldn't determine my happiness for that day, I guess. So if nothing else, sometimes it's a good kick in the butt to just, yeah, it's not that serious, especially as washed up athlete. There's nothing wrong with taking a few days off, and honestly, it's fun to, at least for me, I haven't had anything where I've had to. I mean, I've like asked you about stuff, but not anything where I've had to. It's like super dramatic where I need to go through a full rehab. It's more so just, okay, experiment with this, take what I know, and try and rehab this and improve this on my own. You hit into the rest piece a little bit. What are your thoughts on like the rice protocol, the standard of just laying up, icing, and chilling out, and then diving back into it?
yeah, I mean, we see Price is good for a lot of the musculoskeletal conditions, the tendons, the muscle strains. Um, yeah, we see Rice, we see Price, protect, rest, ice, elevate, compress. A lot of those things are good, right? Our body's a healer. Those things allow our body to do the things that it needs. But yeah, there's certain scenarios that's not necessarily the thing that's going to help, right? Like our nerve stuff, maybe that's not going to help. And I think seeing professional help for stuff that isn't working with Price is important, because there's just some things that our body doesn't heal if we don't put the right input into the things. And that means doing stuff like working on your core, working on muscle tightness, working on joint play and joint mobility, doing things that allows your body to move the way it's designed and not have to compensate for like deficiencies, like say your scapula is not working right or your shoulder blade's not working right. So that can lead to shoulder problems, right? So we think our shoulder's the one that's causing us trouble, but it could be our scapula, right? We have to look at the core. We have to look at all the way to the root of the problem. So I think it's just a complex thing. Our bodies are complex, but it's something that's really cool and unique to try and solve the logic puzzle of a root. Because you could have core weakness and have an ankle sprain. Like it could all tie back to the core, and you have to look at the body as a whole unit and just try to solve the mystery of what may be slacking. So I think price is obviously good, right? I think we're in a good spot where we're on that side of things where rest is hard for us. I think the other side is not being able to find the motivation and find it within yourself to go out and move your body, because maybe it's been a while. Maybe you've been a little sedentary and your body, it hurts to move. It hurts after. I think every time that I maybe rest for a little too long, maybe we're on vacation, that first week is always the hardest. I feel like there's always the most DOMS or muscle soreness that first week back. So it can be hard to set that routine. But yeah, I think there's definitely a happy ground between doing too much, doing too little, and just listening to your body. So I think there's a happy medium with a lot of things. But yeah, recovery is important. And the more I've gotten out of athletics, the more I've prioritized it, because I feel like feeling good is the most important thing out of athletics. And you can probably talk a little bit about that yourself. Like, how have your goals changed going from an athletic realm to more of just real life?
As far as rehab or just in general?
Just like training goals in general. Like, what are you training for? What do you prioritize? How do you look at training as far as feeling good, looking good, moving well? Like, what do you strive for? Like, what motivates? I guess not really what motivates you, but what is like the end goal, or what drives you?
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of things and not one specific goal. Like, obviously, I still want to have some level of strength, but that's not my one pursuit. Like, I want to be explosive and fast, but that's not my only pursuit. I want to have a good physique, good rest, or like good cardio, but it's not the main thing. So it's just kind of sprinkling everything, kind of being more so a jack of all trades, just because, like we've talked about here, just any time that I need to do something in real life, I want to be able to do it, whether it's playing pickleball or going on a spontaneous run or doing a random gymnastics trick out of nowhere. Yeah, just being able to do a bunch of different things. And we talked about it with Alex Canellis a few weeks ago on our podcast. Just there's a bunch of different ways to be strong. And I've been really strong before at like bench squat clean, and it was a lot of fun, but it doesn't really motivate me as much. Whereas a lot of people, when they're done playing, that's their time to get really, really strong, maybe get into powerlifting for a few years. And so, yeah, I think it's a lot of things, and being able to, just stay healthy and resilient as I get up there in age, get to be a more seasoned vet, just making sure my mobility is still good and knee health is good. Obviously, we talked about like jumper's knee and stuff like that. So, yeah, just trying to keep my body as resilient as possible. And I think that's come through just a lot of experimentation and just having a well-rounded training balance of upper and lower, but also muscle groups and targeting the tendons with different things. So just trying to be well-rounded, but there's still times I like to experiment and push it, which inevitably results in injuries every once in a while, but relatively minor. And like I said, it's kind of fun to work through those. But
I think that's honestly one of my favorite things about post-athletic training is you can kind of choose what you want it to be, right? You're not training for football specifically, right? You can have a holistic view and kind of do whatever you want and prioritize your interests. Like, you're not necessarily, like, I'm not required to squat and clean and deadlift and do all these huge Olympic lifts as part of a requirement for me to be healthy and be fit and what I want to be. And I think that's important for sustainability and consistency, right? If we're doing a bunch of these exercises that we don't enjoy in the long run, we're not going to be consistent. We're not going to enjoy moving and trying to be our healthiest self, right? So I've been able to dive into this more cardiovascular realm. I've been able to mess with mobility training and do a lot of different things, and it's opened my eyes to just creating your fitness journey and having to be unique to you. I think that's one of the biggest things with my custom programming is I ask the clients, like, what do you enjoy and what do you want to pursue as part of your fitness journey? Like, where do you want this to go? Like, what motivates you? What pushes you? Where do you see yourself at the end of this? And then equipping them with the equipment they have, the time they have, just like the factors that motivate them, putting them in a spot to succeed, being that motivating, the person that keeps them accountable, and tries to push them to places they haven't been able to do by themselves. So I think it's just having the holistic approach of doing things that you enjoy. And maybe that is Olympic lifts for some people. Like, it doesn't have to be one size fits all for everybody, but I think it's been cool to, especially for me, trying to be well-rounded in a lot of different areas, right? We've prioritized strength training and power and a lot of these things through our football career, speed, and just diving into different realms has been really rewarding for me, and just seeing what it's like on the other side. So yeah. It's been a cool journey. I know you had some buggy knees early on. I know at one point it was like hard to read a green, like bend over and get to that full motion. I'm curious what you maybe implemented as maybe part of like a health regime or make your body feel a little bit better. What worked, maybe what sources you sought out to help with that? Because I've realized, like, it didn't take that long that I realized you were getting more mobility and feeling better. So I'm curious if you have like maybe some recall of that, or maybe even other joints that you've worked on or tendons. Curious.
Yeah. I think you hit on it too with the freedom aspect. You're free to choose how you want to train, but you're also free to, if you need to back off or if you need to, take a day away from training, there's not that pressure that you have as an athlete. Like, I got to push through this. I gotta practice. I got to play. I got to get this training session in. And I think the knee stuff was part of that. Like, I obviously wanted to get really strong in the off season, and I would have like little flare ups. Honestly, it would usually flare up around the off season when we were doing intramural basketball. So it's all of a sudden increase in volume. Yeah, while I was heavier, to between 220 to 240 at that time. So more body weight, and already had historically bad knees. I've always had more quad tendonitis, or not tendonitis, tendinopathy, tendon pain. So I never really knew what the source of it was, but obviously there'd be things that would flare it up. And honestly, looking back, it's just increases in volume when I wasn't ready. And, maybe it was other things like not great shoes, or just the way I was training, the movements I was doing. Maybe there was some sort of imbalance. But I think when it came down to it, it was just this pressure to like get my squats as high as possible and just get as strong as possible. And I'd be feeling decent. And then I just, push through it one day because I'm feeling good. Maybe push the depth or a weight a little bit, and then it would flare back up, and then deal with it for another few months. And so, yeah, when I was done, it was more of a chance to just kind of experiment with that and see where that's coming from, and being able to control the volume more, not having practice volume, game volume, lifting volume kind of handed to me. It was freedom to figure out that like training split as I go. And yeah, just experimenting through that, and also just learning more about, again, like tendon health and how that's different from how you train muscles. And so it was what's been helpful for me is obviously, yeah, that that volume. I still like to like sprint and jump, so there's still that pounding, but it's more smart with the volume. Usually just alternating upper and lower days, and also like CNS days, so higher and lower. So there's more of that like sprinting and jumping on those higher days, and so just being able to split that up instead of doing that every day, and then incorporating ISOs. I like to do that on my upper body days, just like in between sets, just do some sort of like cable like knee extension or a sissy squat ISO or some sort of slow lower. It's just what I like about ISOs is you can just kind of be more in tune with how it feels. Whereas like a dynamic movement, it might just flare up out of nowhere. Like just one single rep, it can flare up. Whereas tendons, you can really feel it. You can be in tune with how it's feeling. You can keep lowering into it, or you can sink back out of it if it's not feeling very good. It's just a good way to load that. And then I think just again having more balance in my training, just a lot of push and a lot of pull, strengthening the lower leg, just making that more resilient with plantar flexion as well as doing it bent knee with more of a soleus emphasis, and then doing tibialis work, doing inversion, eversion, and then I think like feet strength is something that's overlooked. So maybe just thinking about how I'm walking or just being barefoot more, or recently got those Vivo barefoots and I really like the feel of those. So it's a ton of factors with any injury, with any lingering issue. There's always going to be a lot of factors, and I don't think you can always just pinpoint it on one thing. I think it's just again being able to experiment with that and having the freedom to step back a little with when I need to. And yeah, just go from there. Just try and keep it resilient, focusing more on like range of motion rather than just throwing around as much weight as possible and not having to grind through those things. So yeah, have you had any flare-ups as you've gotten into running more, or any other issues you've dealt with?
I wouldn't say flare-ups. I've been pretty cautious of how my body's been feeling, especially early on. I feel like it took a while for both of my soleus muscles to adapt to the load, especially being a little bit heavier than a typical runner. So I definitely was cautious with how I was feeling. Didn't want to get any sort of like tendonitis happening there early on, because at the end of the day, running is a consistency game and getting out the door as much as you can. So I was paying attention a lot to that and just like listening to a lot of feet stuff. There's been times where it's been a little bit naggy. I've only had it maybe once or twice, but back off for a couple of days and you feel fine after. So that's been good. I've really haven't had anything running wise. But I always had that kind of patellar tendonitis, quad tendonitis from basketball as well throughout high school. So being able to adapt my training since athletics for that has been good as well. Like seeing sources like Ben Patrick that do knees over toes, emphasize stretch strength training has been really cool to see. And even like we just did the functional movement screen this week in class, identifying areas where you maybe have mobility deficits, understanding what movements are really hard for you to do well. Like for me, my ankle mobility sucks, and it's not calf tightness, it's not soleus tightness, it's probably in the joint, right? So it's something that I probably need to have like joint mobs done in order to see improvement. So like for me, doing like barefoot deep squats is probably not the best thing, and it's probably going to make my knees hurt or my hips hurt because I'm going to have to compensate for my lack of ankle mobility. So finding exercises that are better for my mobility and doing things that make my body feel good the day after and the week after, and things that I enjoy doing, or just adapting that exercise, right? Having something under your heel, allowing you to get to that range and not have to compensate with other joints. I think it's super important to just understand where maybe you lack mobility and where you need improvement, and whether that's a muscle, whether that's a joint, what is causing that limitation. We all are unique in our anatomy, right? We don't have the same lengths of bones. We don't have the same like muscle elasticity, ligament elasticity, tendon health. So I think it's important to listen to your body, see what exercises you think fit your body well, stuff you enjoy, and then just really doing those things well, right? Controlling it through the eccentric, doing some isometrics, getting blood flow to that area, stretching the full range, not selling yourself short on the range of motion, because I think a lot of the biggest gains are at the last couple degrees of range of motion. I think there's a lot there. So I think just controlling a lot of movements and not being afraid to push your joints to motion ranges you haven't really done before. So as long as you're not necessarily compensating, I think there's a lot of good from going through ranges that may feel uncomfortable at the start, but that takes humility, right? You're not going to be able to do the weight you probably typically would, or the reps that you typically would, and you might be a little more sore than you probably were, because you're going into the more of a range, you're going through more of an eccentric, you're controlling it more, so your muscles are gonna feel it. It's gonna be a higher CNS load, right? Eccentric activation causes more muscle soreness after. It causes more central nervous or central system activation. So I think there's a lot to take in that next step in your journey as a good mover, as a lifelong mover, and not necessarily just an athlete of, look how much weight I can move in a shorter range as possible. Yeah. Right? We see lifts like, I mean, do you see that Northwestern squat, like 700 pounds? Like, I bet his knees probably don't feel too great today. So yeah, it's a crazy lift, and props to him, but I mean, we don't need to be doing that, right? Like, our body would probably feel like crap if I went and put 8 plates on a bar. It's crazy. Yeah. But yeah, some of those things, it's just, each body's unique, each training style is unique. Find something you enjoy and can stick to that motivates you and keeps you going to the gym, and just listen to what your body's saying. I think it's all there.
Yeah. That's probably the biggest thing I missed for my knee stuff was, I mean, like, you hit it on the knees over toes stuff, and I don't agree with everything he says. There's some stuff that I don't love, but I think the general concept of that has been good for me, and just embracing, like, I would always low bar squat because it would prevent my knees from traveling forward. So more of like a forward lean with my torso, and hips would be far back, and it would work to an extent until I inevitably found myself in a position with my knees over my toes. So whether that was, doing some sort of loaded jump, or, in basketball or football, when, you're going to cut and your knee travels forward, like, my body wasn't prepared to handle that because I had been training myself to avoid that at all costs. But I think just learning to, like you said, embrace those range of motions, embrace those different joint angles, and yeah, just, again, back to getting strong in as many ways as you can. I think doing a super deep single leg squat takes an insane level of strength that maybe a 700-pound squatter couldn't do. And I think that's, again, if you can get that high of a squat, that's a great thing. But if you're missing out on those other areas, I think that could be detrimental as well, and just being more robust. So I think that's, I mean, even as I was, like, during my strength coach time, it was just getting more and more outside of the squat rack and just moving in as many ways as possible, and just realizing that, again, there's more to it than bench, squat, and clean. And I think former athletes can realize that as well. Just not doing the same routine all the time, just experimenting and moving in different ways, getting strong in as many ways as possible. And just, if there is an activity you like doing, whether it's running or basketball or pickleball, just looking at that sport and working backward from it, and just preparing your body to meet those demands and training in a way that helps improve that rather than just chasing pure strength. I think that is important for athletes, but also, I mean, for anyone. Hopefully everyone still has ways they like to stay active, and so it's just making sure your training is actually helping you out with that. And I think that's, I mean, yeah, same as a PT. Like if you're dealing with an injury, sometimes you need to seek outside help. I think even as a former athlete, like seeking outside help if you're not sure how to train your body in a way that helps you with that, help you meet those goals. I think it's, yeah, even just asking, someone like me and you who's been doing this a long time, just, asking for some tips. I think that can go a long way and just help you think about training in a different way, instead of just getting caught up into routines or training like you did back in college. So I think it's just, yeah, experimenting and seeing what works.
And I like what you said about, right. I like what Ben Patrick says, but I don't like subscribe to every single thing that he says, right? I can take snippets and apply it to my training regime and see what I like, see what I don't, right? I do that with a lot of different sources these days. We can navigate the internet with a lot of good sources. A lot of more people are putting good stuff out there, whether that's Ben Patrick, whether that's Andy Galpin, whether that's, name it, Peter Attia, whoever. There's a lot of good sources out there, and you have to be willing to look, willing to learn, willing to experiment with your own body and see what you like, see what you don't. But one of my professors brought this up earlier this week. Like he trained, or he had therapy with like a former defensive player of the year, like, right? Like he could bench 400 pounds, but he was having this back pain, and he had a weak core. He could bench 400 pounds, but his core was weak and he was having back pain. Like we have to look at the whole picture, right? We have to train holistically. And that means not just training, that means sleeping, that means eating, that means recovering well, right? So I think it's the biggest message at the end of the day, I think, is trying to be holistic with yourself, whether that's pain, not looking just at the source, but trying to find the root, and not just applying what specifically to that tendon, right? Trying to find the root cause. And same thing with training, like not just working on things that are pretty and sexy, but trying to find the foundation of training and what makes you feel good. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about being holistic. Yeah, I think it's important. And I think one of the things is understanding pain versus discomfort, right? So discomfort during a run is inevitable. It's going to happen. Discomfort during a set to failure is inevitable, right? But it's not necessarily pain, right? And you have to be in tune with your body to understand what's pain and what's discomfort. Is this harming me? Is this leading to injury? Is what I'm doing like actually harming my body, or is it just discomfort in the time? Is this something that's just going to pass when the set's over and I'll be fine in a minute, right? Because training through discomfort is fine and it's inevitable and it's how we grow, right? So I think with pain, it's complex. There's a biopsychosocial model about pain, like it's biological, it's psychological. There's social factors, like there's a lot of different things to pain. So I think it's being in tune with your body, not shying away from the pain because that can be bad, but also not pushing through too much pain because that's also not bad, right? There's a happy medium to both. So just identifying pain versus discomfort, identifying, am I shying away from pain? Am I kind of being a wuss? Do I need to look at myself in the mirror and think, is this actually causing injury? Is this pain actually bad? Or is it just my head telling me that I shouldn't be doing this? So, but also not being Mr. Strong Guy and running through Achilles tendonitis or being dumb and not listening to your body. So I think there's just a happy medium. I think discomfort is inevitable, and you just have to look at yourself at the end of the day and kind of like self-assess. I think self-assessment is so important, especially through training. Like I assess like my body and my goals like almost every day. Like it's just something that's ingrained in me. And I think it's super important. But I'm curious your thoughts on pain and discomfort, if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, just getting back into the practical side of, I mean, coming back from that or dealing with that, I think, I'm more on the side where I probably push it too far and staying active and still finding ways to move. But I think, I mean, even athletes I'd have, they would, injure a finger and then take themselves out of training for, that week that they're dealing with that. It's like, okay, you got how many other body parts that we can still train? And again, there's a time to rest, especially if, maybe it's more debilitating, like a back issue where it kind of affects the whole system. But, if it's an outer extremity, like, I think there's a lot of benefit in one, still training to strengthen those other parts and still, maybe make improvements, even if there's some things you can't do. There's a ton you can do. You can put a safety bar on your back instead of a barbell. You can still, do your elliptical and maybe take a phase where you're focusing more on your cardio. So I think there's benefit in that, still improving what you can. But I think that also does a lot for you in your recovery. Blood flow is a great thing. Lactate is a great thing for healing. And the mental side, obviously, there's like a dopamine effect. And I think too much rest can be a bad thing. I think it's mentally not great for you. And I think you lose out on a lot of the physical benefits for healing as well. I think even of the, I'm struggling to think of the word, but the cross limb effect of, like, let's say my left shoulder is impacted, but I still train my right shoulder. There's an effect that I can still improve the strength and the recoverability of that injured side. So there's just a ton of benefit to continuing to move and continuing to train. And obviously you have to be smart with that. But even for the injured area, just like there's a natural progression you can take with that. You don't have to not move for 6 weeks and then go straight back into your routine and just hope for the best. I think it has to be, okay, maybe you need to rest for a few days. And then we start with some body weight movements, kind of test the range of it, maybe do some ISO holds to test where we're at. Okay. And then I add some weight. I take a little bit out of the tempo. Maybe it was a 6-second eccentric. Now it's a 3-second eccentric. And I'm doing the concentric portion normally. And then I add some, maybe it's a lower limb injury. Maybe I add some extensive plyos before going into regular 100% plyos. And so I think it has to be a natural progression, just as we would with an injured athlete, that progression from, full injury, fully debilitated to back on the field. You can't go from 0 to 100. It has to be steps in the progression. And I think that comes with time. And again, like, I've gone through that with a lot of things. So just that experience of, just looking at the injury, okay, diagnosing what's affected and knowing how to heal it or improve it, whether that's, a sudden injury or something like the knee pain that I spoke on earlier. Or even like I have a wrist thing going on right now. Like it's debilitating as heck, but there's still a lot of things I can do. And so just being smart with how I'm approaching that and still finding ways to move, still finding ways to achieve goals, even if there are some things that I can't do during that time. I think it has to be a balance and not leaning too far into just kicking it up on the couch for a few weeks just because you have something going on. I think it's finding ways to move and still improve through that.
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be a norm to live through pain. I think there's so many things you can do in your daily life to combat going through that. I'm not saying that you're going to be pain free for the rest of your life, right? Like there's obviously going to be aches and pains, but I think finding the solution, doing the right exercises, building the strength, finding the mobility, it can go a long way, right? But like you said, there's so much benefit to movement and exercise, and I think the foundation is in that, right? It's sleep, it's movement, it's food, it's lifestyle, right? We do Holy 40 for a reason. It's a holistic approach, and I think there's just a lot of truth to those benefits. We could talk about the benefits of exercise for our next 10 podcasts and we wouldn't hit everything. So I think there's just so much behind it. I think, yeah, there's just the athletic mindset of living through pain, fighting through pain, and being afraid to ask for help, right? You have to, when you ask for help, you have to admit that you don't have the answers. And it can be hard to drop the ego at the door and seek help. But at the end of the day, to do the things that you want to do in this life, achieve the goals that you have set out, it's going to be hard to do it all on your own, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So I think there's just power to laying your ego down, understanding that you're not always the smartest guy in the room, and just trying to find that issue early so you're not dealing with it for life, right? I mentioned earlier, acute pain can lead to chronic pain. Chronic pain can be a disease that you're dealing with for forever. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to that. And there's even, right, there's a faith perspective. Our body's a temple. It mentions that in the Bible. Our body's a temple and we should treat it like so. So I think you're doing yourself a disservice, not maximizing your body's ability, because it is an amazing thing, right? It's a gift. It's so complex but simple. Like being able to understand, like trying to understand the body has been such a blessing and such a passion of mine. And it's so complex, but the way it works is yet simple. Like it's so intricate. You can see God's design throughout the whole system, and it's amazing. I think you probably have a similar passion in the human body and training and what we can do as humans. And I think, yeah, looking yourself in the mirror and seeing what motivates you, seeing what drives you, from a physical perspective, from a psychological perspective, from a faith perspective. Something for me, like down the road, like being able to play with my kids, being able to even like be a grandfather and play with my kids' doing stuff for life. Like I'm doing the things now to set myself up for a better future, and I think it's important to have that long-term mentality and not push through the aches and pains right now just for a short-term goal, a short-term outcome. Because at the end of the day, we're past that athletic career. We're doing it for the long term, and I think taking that holistic approach, taking the nip it in the butt, find the source, ask for help, do whatever you can, find something that's sustainable. A lot of these lessons are important to be the best you. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to find the best you that's pain-free, that's sleeping, that's eating well, that's just doing the right things. Because no one wants to float through this life lukewarm. I think we want to find something that motivates us, something that we're passionate about, and something we can strive for. So I don't know. You got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it before, but like pain shouldn't be someone's normal, and there's going to be things. I mean, like we had Drake on a few weeks ago. He's had some stuff in his college career that's just hard to come back from and deal with. But like he's still finding a way to stay active and do what he can. But I think we allow, like back pain, debilitating, or like plantar fasciitis or something like lower limb can be really debilitating. And I think just not accepting living that way. Again, we're trying to be our best selves, and I think being able to move well and do what you love to do movement wise, I think that's a big part of that. And yeah, treating your body like a temple, that's more than just making sure you're exercising and eating right. I think pain is a part of that, and I think again, just not accepting that, not being okay with living like that, and just wanting better for yourself. So whatever that takes, if it's finally getting something diagnosed, or finally just maybe you need a surgery, maybe just sucking it up and getting it done so that you can go through that, but then eventually be your best self on the other side of that. Or if it's just something lingering, annoying, just finding a way to work through that. And it's even beyond movement. Maybe it's, dialing in nutrition and sleep. I think that goes such a long way. Like we like to, there's tools like, Theraguns, and we talked about ice or like heat, and these tools can be great, but we often neglect just simple nutrition and sleep habits. And I think that goes a long way in helping with pain and coming back from injuries. Um, but yeah, with pain, I think it's, again, treating it when it's there, but also like you hit on, doing things to prevent it. And again, like with Justin, we talked about, you can't always prevent injury, but you can mitigate the risk, and you can mitigate the risk of pain. So I think there's things movement wise. We talked about powerlifting, like some of that can have some negative long-term effects if you're like pushing your spine too far, or your knees just can't handle it. And we see, there's a ton of power lifters in their 50s and 60s who can't move. And yeah, that's just not a fun way to live. So I think you do have to have that long-term mindset, and just exposing yourself to different ways to move, and your movement toolbox, so to speak, and doing those things that help with the long run. And it can be things that you're doing that are harmful, but also things that you're not doing. So if you're, not working out at all, there's going to be issues like, when you inevitably find yourself, playing or playing a random game of pickup basketball, you're probably more likely to hurt yourself if you haven't done anything in a couple months. So I think it's, that we've hit on, there's obviously a ton of benefits to exercise, and I think just preventing pain and working to prevent injury is just one of those. And that's one of the nice outcomes. It's freeing to know, like, if you randomly go and do one of those things, just knowing that you've prepared for it, and knowing your body is resilient enough to handle the stress of that. Again, you can't always prevent everything, but you can always mitigate the risk, and just making yourself a more resilient human. I think there's a ton of benefit and comfort in that.
And I think we're coming from a standpoint, we're both blessed. We didn't have severe injuries like Drake. We didn't have surgeries. We didn't have a lot of serious trauma that we're recovering from. And there's some pain that there's no answers, right? Our bodies are complex. There's biological factors, there's psychological, there's just countless factors that go into pain, like more than you realize. And I think at the end of the day, there's some that we just don't have answers for even today. And it's awesome that research is coming out. There's more people looking into pain, but it is at the end of the day complex. And sometimes you just got to try and do all the right things. You got to move, you got to eat well, you got to sleep, and just pray, because sometimes there's maybe not an answer. There's not a black and white. That's something that can be hard, and especially in the field of physical therapy, it's not all black and white. So we can set you up for success. We can do all the right things that we know that are researched and that's out there. But like I said, we can't promise that you're going to be pain free for the rest of your life. It's a bit more complex. So I feel for those. I empathize for those that do deal with chronic pain, have those complexities, because nobody wants that. So we're blessed. I'm thankful. Body feels good. I'm able to do the things I love and follow my passions. And I think you could say the same. So I think we both come from a place that is health, and that is wellness. And I don't think we take it for granted. I think we both put in the work, put in the time, put in the effort to do the things we need to feel good. Not saying that there's some people that don't, but yeah, it's complex. Our bodies are complex, but anything else you can think of?
Yeah, just we hit on it, and I'm the same way. Just sometimes we like to work through things on our own, and I think they're if it's something minor, I think there's a time and place for that. But I think there also is times where you need to, be more vulnerable, just be more willing to accept help and realize you don't have to go through it alone, whether that's someone else who's experienced, the same issues or has experienced the same issues, or just getting professional help and not accepting where you're at. Again, it's hard to do as a former athlete. Again, we hit on it. It's easier as an athlete when you have those resources. You have your ATs around you at all times. You have your coaches there at all times. You have teammates who may be going through the same thing, but it can be a lonely road as a former athlete working through it on your own. We hit on the freedom that comes with that, but there's also, because of that freedom, there's sometimes less resources. But again, take advantage of your resources, whether that's research, ChatGPT, or again, just using the people around you and professionals around you, and just being willing to seek help when it's needed. Because we all need help with something. We all need someone to lean on with something. It doesn't have to be health related, but just finding that group or those people to go to, I think that's a good tool to have, just knowing when to ask for help. So,
yeah, and even I've heard there's groups of people that share common, whether it's experiences that happen to them, just people that have gone through similar things. I think it's really powerful to seek out help from those that maybe have experienced the things you have gone through, something similar, and share those experiences, and maybe seek help in what they've found beneficial, whether that's like, a mental health group or an AA group, whatever that may be, right? I think there's power in finding a group to keep you accountable and a group to get you through it. You're not on this journey alone, like you said. And there's so much power in asking for help and not having all the answers, try to be on your own shoulders. I think there's a lot of freedom. But yeah, that's part of the faith journey as well, right? It's having faith that there's a bigger power, there's a bigger plan, and just trusting in that plan and having the peace that you don't need to have all the answers and you can do all the right things in your own head, but you're going to fail. There's going to be things every day you're going to fail at, but just trying to do the best you can and understanding that at the end of the day, it's something bigger than yourself, I think is huge.
Yeah, honestly, prayer maybe is the most underrated tool. I think just being consistent in your prayers if you're dealing something, and just believing in the healing power of that. I mean, there's countless stories of healing in the Bible, but I think we're sometimes hesitant to believe that in our age, that healing can happen. So I think, yeah, whether you're praying for something else or praying for your own injury or sickness that you're going through, I think just recognizing the power that has and believing in the power that can have, and just doing that consistently, continuing showing up day after day, even if it feels like, you're dealing with the same thing. I think just fully believing in that healing power, I think that goes a long way and is underrated as well. So maybe something to think about too.
And there's so much power in understanding the impact that like stress can have, and understanding that you're not going to be able to control like everything. Like maybe that number on the scale isn't moving and you're doing all the right things. Maybe you're having this pain and you're doing all the right things, right? But having that chronic stress, like that's going to impact you more than you know, right? So doing the prayer, doing the meditation, doing the things you need to allow your body to get out of that fight or flight mode and just truly rest and recover is so important. And just placing that stress on God and allowing him to deal with your problems. And whether that's, right, we mentioned some outcomes, whether that's journal, being grateful, trying to find that opposite route, find things you're grateful for, do things that make you happy and get your mind off the stress. Because at the end of the day, things are more complex than you think. They're not all physical, and there's a lot more that plays into it. And I think stress is one thing that's overlooked. And in today's society, it's all it all compounds, right? It's a momentum thing. We get stressed, we lose sleep because we're stressed. We eat like crap because we didn't sleep, and we have more cravings because we didn't sleep, and we don't move because we feel like crap because we're tired because we didn't sleep, and we don't eat as well, so we don't have the energy. And it's just a compounding snowball effect of things that lead you down the path, and it's hard to get out of that hole because you only dig deeper once you start that. And I think the same goes for the positive momentum. It's a little bit harder to keep that momentum going, but once you sleep good, once you find the right nutrition plan, once you find that routine for exercise, I think it becomes second nature. It becomes habit, and you're just finding the fruitful nature of doing the right things and compounding over time, and just finding the best version of you. I think there's so much power in taking a certain amount of time, whether that's 40 days, whether that's a couple months, whether that's a year, and just dedicating that to yourself, investing in yourself, seeing where you can take it. Because we know getting to the place is harder than maintaining it. So once we get to that new level of health and feeling better, like it's a lot easier to maintain that level than it is to get there. And you really just have to commit, whether that's 2 weeks, 4 months, whatever it may be, but just take the time, do the right things, get to that level, get to that weight, get to the routine, and then just try to stick with it. You don't have to be perfect when you get there, just get there. And then our bodies are really good at adapting. And you're impacting so much more than just your routine, right? There's epigenetic stuff, there's like physiological stuff that's happening while you're getting there. And once you get there, it's a lot more likely you're going to stay there. So I think there's just a lot of power in building the momentum, building the snowball in the right direction, and not digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper. So there's power in yourself. Just got to find it, dig deep, ask for help, be vulnerable, invest in yourself.
Boom.
Power.
Heck of a way to cap it off. You got anything else?
Nah, I think we had a good one.
Yeah, love it. Ask for help if you need it. But yeah, get out there.
Doesn't have to be us. I mean, we'd love to help you.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of answers. We don't have all the answers. I'll say that myself. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'll do my best research. I'll do what I can to help you, or put someone in your life that can help you. I have a lot of connections that I feel really good about. So you just have to ask for help. Have to be someone that can check your ego at the door and ask. So yeah,
that's what I love about the Discord aspect of the Holy 40. Like, again, me and you don't have all the answers. We're not perfect with their habits every day, but just having people on the same mission and just sharing their own ways to, conquer a challenge or a specific habit. It's cool to just run the race with other people. So yeah, find some people to run the race with. And again, if that's us, if it's not us, we don't care. Just get after it, whatever it takes. All good?
All good.
Perfect. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave a rating, review, or tell a friend to check us out. Be sure to follow us at SHRP_training for more content to help you be your best self. Go be great today.